Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring something pretty profound, something many of us grapple with, loss and, well, what might come after.
We're looking at some really extraordinary claims, actually, from someone you might not expect, a leading neuroscientist and psychiatrist who faced immense personal tragedy herself.
Right. This deep dive is all about the possibility of uh, communication with those who've passed on, the untapped potential of our minds, and maybe even how we could cultivate these abilities.
And the expert guiding this is Dr. Tara Swart. She's a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, and a neuroscientist. So she brings this rigorous scientific lens, but also, crucially, a deeply personal experience to the table.
Our mission today isn't to say, this is absolutely true or this isn't, but rather to unpack Dr. Swart's journey. We'll look at her discoveries, the science she believes supports them, and what it all could mean for how we understand things like consciousness, grief, and maybe our own potential.
Yeah, we're just exploring the evidence she presents. Prepare yourself, though, because some of this might really shift your perspective. It involves some surprising ideas.
Let's start with that personal story then. It's really central to this. Almost 4 years back, 2021, Dr. Swart lost her husband, Robin, to leukemia. It was just 2 days before their 4th wedding anniversary.
Just devastating. And despite her background, her knowledge of the brain, she said she felt totally locked and broken.
Understandably. So in that initial grief, that desperation, what did she do?
Well, first she actually sought out mediums, psychics.
Did that help?
Apparently not. She found them pretty unconvincing, actually. And that frustration kind of sparked a thought in her mind.
Which was?
Basically, okay, if communication is possible and my whole career is about optimizing the brain, shouldn't I be able to figure this out myself?
That's a fascinating turn, taking her scientific mind and applying it to this incredibly personal, maybe even taboo area.
Absolutely. And what she experienced personally was so extraordinary that, well, she kept it secret for 4 years.
4 years, why so long?
Fear. As a psychiatrist, she worried people would think she was, quote, insane. She mentioned being part of teams that had institutionalized people, sometimes against their will, for making similar kinds of claims.
Wow. The professional risk was enormous then.
Huge. Imagine that internal conflict. But eventually, after years of exploration, she came to a really strong conviction.
Which is?
She now asserts, with what she calls 100% certainty, that communication with someone who has passed is possible.
100% certainty. That's a bold statement for a scientist.
It is. And she follows it up by saying the human mind is capable of so much more than what we think.
Okay, so where did she even begin to find scientific footing for this? How did she start to bridge that gap?
Well, a key starting point was questioning our basic assumptions about perception, like how many senses do you think humans have? What would most people say?
5, right. Sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. That's what we all learn.
That's the common answer. But Dr. Swart's research and other scientific work actually suggests humans have, wait for it, 34 senses.
34? Seriously, like what?
Well, think about things your body monitors without you consciously thinking about it. Your sense of balance, for example, or your body's ability to detect blood pH levels, or oxygen and carbon dioxide balance. Proprioception, knowing where your limbs are without looking.
Ah, okay. So not all things we're consciously aware of minute to minute.
Exactly. Many are non-conscious. But the point is, this expanded suite of senses suggests our capabilities for interacting with the world, or maybe beyond, are, as she puts it, way beyond what you might even imagine.
So if we have this broader sensory toolkit, how did that play out for her, specifically in relation to connecting with Robin? What were the first signs?
Well, one early thing was seeing robins, the bird, his namesake. They started appearing frequently in her garden in Hampshire, even in London.
Okay, but that could be coincidence, right? You might see more robins if you're thinking about someone named Robin.
Absolutely. And she rationalized it that way at first. But then came something much harder to dismiss, about 6 weeks after he passed.
What?
She was woken up in the night by a, quote, massive thump on her shoulder, like a physical impact. Yeah. She opened her eyes, and next to her bed, she saw this very vague, hazy version of Robin.
Like an apparition.
Sort of. She said it gradually got clearer. She could see the outline of his hair, his face.
Yeah.
And then it just dissolved. From the top down, she was totally transfixed.
That's intense. Were there other kinds of experiences, not just visual?
Oh, yes. Her grief showed up physically in profound ways, too. Around the first anniversary of his death, she started having aches and pains all over her body for about 6 or 7 weeks.
With no obvious cause.
No obvious cause.
Yeah.
Then she realized the date the pain started, October 4th, was the exact date she'd brought Robin home from the hospital for palliative care to die at home.
Wow. The body
The
remembers.
body absolutely remembers trauma, even when the conscious mind isn't dwelling on the date. Another example. She felt freezing cold, shivering uncontrollably for the 2 weeks leading up to his cremation.
Like,
She connected it later. Robin hated being cold, and of course his body was being held in a refrigerated morgue drawer during that time.
that's quite a connection. It really speaks to that mind-body link, or maybe something more.
It does. And these initial sort of spontaneous experiences led her to wonder if she could actively cultivate this connection.
Right. Moving from receiving unexpected things to actually maybe asking for signs.
Exactly. She talks about developing her sign muscle,
Hmm.
learning to ask for specific signs and then receiving them, sometimes even on the same day she asked.
How does one develop a sign muscle? Sounds intriguing.
She says it took years, like learning a language or going to the gym. It's a gradual process of tuning in, paying attention, and building belief, perhaps.
Can you give an example of asking for a specific sign?
Yes, the Phoenix story is a powerful one. Before Robin's second anniversary, she was in America feeling really burnt out, and she specifically asked Robin for a sign involving a phoenix.
A phoenix, okay. A symbol of rebirth.
Right. Soon after, she's walking around and sees a restaurant called Phoenix Garden. That was the first hit.
Interesting coincidence.
But then it gets more specific. She was promised a direct flight back to LA. But on the actual anniversary day, her flight path was changed unexpectedly.
To where?
She was routed through Phoenix, Arizona.
On the anniversary day after asking for a phoenix sign.
Exactly. The specific symbol, the timing, the unexpected nature of the flight change, it all felt very significant to her.
Okay, I have to ask the question any skeptic or even just a curious person would ask. Confirmation bias. How does she, as a scientist, deal with that? You know, the brain's tendency to see what it's looking for. Our reticular activating system filtering reality.
That's a really important point. She addresses it directly. She tries to counter confirmation bias in a couple of ways.
Such as?
One way is by setting very narrow criteria for a sign. For instance, asking for a specific, maybe unusual symbol to appear 3 times before a certain deadline.
Making it less likely to be random chance.
Right. Or requiring the sign to appear when she goes out of her way, meaning not in her usual environment or routine, making it less likely she'd encounter it normally.
Can you give an example of that out-of-the-way criterion?
Yeah, she shared one about walking past University College Hospital, where Robin had received treatment. It was obviously a very upsetting place for her to be.
Understandable.
So, feeling distressed, she asked for a sign right then. A bit later, walking near Houston Station, so away from her usual path perhaps, she looked down and saw an elastic band on the pavement.
Just an elastic band.
Not just any elastic band. It was twisted into the shape of an H or an infinity symbol, and that specific shape apparently held deep personal significance for her and Robin.
So the specific symbol found in an unexpected place right after asking. That combination felt meaningful.
Exactly. It was the context, the specificity, the timing that made it hard for her to dismiss as mere coincidence or confirmation bias.
Okay, so let's try and tie some of this together. What are the sort of scientific ideas she leans on to make sense of these experiences, especially in grief? She mentioned something provocative earlier.
Yes, her perspective that profound grief can actually resemble a state like psychosis.
Whoa, okay, explain that. Is she saying grief is psychosis?
Not exactly equating them, but pointing out neurological parallels. Deep grief dramatically alters neurotransmitter levels, things like serotonin and dopamine and electrical signaling in the brain.
How does that relate to psychosis symptoms?
Well, these changes can lead to experiences that overlap with psychotic symptoms. She mentioned thought insertion. For example, the feeling that thoughts are coming from outside oneself, which is a known symptom in schizophrenia.
So she's using neuroscience to maybe validate these very strange seeming experiences that people have in grief.
Precisely. It's about providing a framework, reducing the sense of isolation or feeling like you're going crazy. She has immense empathy for people going through this without the resources to understand the potential neurological underpinnings.
That reframes it quite powerfully. And she also connects this to creativity, doesn't she? This idea of shared traits between creativity and certain mental states.
Yes, the concept of shared trait vulnerability. She talks about 3 neurological underpinnings often seen in both highly creative people and those experiencing certain mental health challenges.
What are those 3?
Okay, first is hyperconnection. This is the brain's enhanced ability to connect seemingly disparate ideas. More areas of the brain firing together, linking concepts in novel ways.
Like joining the dots others don't see.
Exactly. Second is novelty salience. This is a heightened sensitivity to new and important information in the environment, noticing things others might filter out.
Picking up on subtle details.
Right. And third is attenuated latent inhibition. Basically, this means the brain's natural filter is looser. It allows more raw information, more stimuli into conscious awareness than usual.
Okay, so hyperconnection, novelty salience, and a looser filter. How does that link to creativity versus crisis?
Well, Dr. Swart suggests that if you have these traits combined with a high IQ and good cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch thinking patterns, it often results in incredible creativity and expanded perception.
But the flip side.
If someone has these traits but perhaps a lower IQ, or they tend to perseverate, get stuck in rigid thought patterns, the same influx of information and unusual connections can become overwhelming and potentially lead to psychological distress or crisis.
So for her, in her grief, embracing her creative side might have actually helped channel this altered state productively.
That seems to be her perspective. Creativity became a conduit for processing and integrating this expanded awareness she was experiencing.
And this ties into another key point she makes about trauma not just being in the mind.
Yes, absolutely. The idea that trauma is stored physically in the body, this is becoming much more widely accepted now in neuroscience and psychology.
How does that work neurologically?
One aspect is that severe trauma can actually inhibit or shut down Broca's area, the part of the brain involved in articulating speech. That's why people literally feel speechless when overwhelmed or traumatized. The words just aren't there.
Okay. And how is the trauma physically held in the body?
She mentions the serotonin hypothesis as one potential mechanism. This theory suggests that trauma can lead to constriction of tiny blood vessels, capillaries, especially within the fascia.
Fascia, that's the connective tissue throughout the body, right? Now seen almost as an organ itself.
Exactly. The idea is that this constriction affects nutrient release and signaling within that tissue network, effectively locking the trauma pattern into the body's physical structure.
So if trauma is held physically and talking alone might not reach it, what's the solution? What helps release it?
This is where somatic work comes in. Practices that engage the body directly.
Like what kind of things?
She gives lots of examples. Massage, dance, making art, craniosacral therapy, that gentle hands-on therapy focused on cerebrospinal fluid, tai chi, drumming, even things like humming, chanting, or singing.
It sounds almost like ancient practices.
It really does. She connects it to ancient wisdom, like Greek burial rituals involving wailing and beating the chest. These weren't just performative. They were understood as vital ways to physically process and release overwhelming grief.
Moving beyond our own bodies and minds, then, she explores phenomena that really push the boundaries of, well, material science, like terminal lucidity. What exactly is that?
It's fascinating and quite baffling for conventional science. Terminal lucidity is when a patient with severe, often irreversible brain damage, think late-stage Alzheimer's, someone who might have been nonverbal and unresponsive for years.
Okay.
Suddenly in the hours or sometimes day before they die, maybe 1 to 24 hours before, they become completely lucid, clear, coherent, recognizing family, having meaningful conversations.
After years of being unresponsive due to brain damage.
Exactly. And then they pass away. Science really has no solid explanation for how a severely damaged brain can suddenly function like that. It strongly suggests the mind isn't solely dependent on the physical brain structure, at least not in the way we typically assume.
That is truly astounding. It points towards something else, which leads naturally into near-death experiences, NDEs.
Right. Another area filled with accounts that challenge a purely materialist view of consciousness. Dr. Swart mentions several well-known cases.
Such as?
Dr. Mary Neal, an orthopedic surgeon who drowned while kayaking. She was submerged, clinically dead, for maybe 15-20 minutes. She described visiting another realm, encountering beings of light, and being told she had to return.
And Dr. Eben Alexander, he was a neurosurgeon too, wasn't he? And famously skeptical.
They're very skeptical. An atheist neurosurgeon who contracted severe bacterial meningitis fell into a deep coma, brain essentially offline. Clinically dead by some measures. He had an incredibly vivid experience of what he could only describe as heaven, saw deceased relatives, felt immense love, and it completely changed his worldview. He now firmly believes in God.
These personal accounts are compelling, but often hard to verify objectively. Is there more systematic research?
There is. Dr. Swart highlights the work of Dr. Bruce Grayson, a psychiatrist who's arguably the leading scientific researcher on NDEs. He's studied them for over 50 years, collected data on more than 5,000 cases.
And does he have any particularly striking anecdotes that suggest something beyond hallucination?
One he recounts is about an ICU patient who had a cardiac arrest and an NDE. During the NDE, the patient reported seeing his primary nurse, but the nurse also gave him a message.
A message?
Yeah, she told him to tell her parents she was sorry about the red MG.
Okay. What's the significance?
The patient delivered the message after resuscitation, the truly stunning part. The patient had absolutely no way of knowing that this nurse had recently died in a car crash involving a red MG sports car.
Wow. That's hard to explain away as just brain activity during crisis.
It's cases like that, accumulated over decades, that lead researchers like Grayson and Dr. Swart to seriously question the idea that mind is purely a product of the brain.
So what's Dr. Swart's conclusion from phenomena like terminal lucidity and these NDE accounts?
Her conclusion is that the mind, or perhaps the soul, or energy as she sometimes refers to it, likely exists separately from the physical body, that it's part of a larger universe consciousness, or collective consciousness.
That's a big philosophical leap. How does she reconcile that with her scientific training?
She points out that even prominent neuroscientists and physicists acknowledge the limits of current understanding. People like Dr. David Eagleman or Professor Donald Hoffman explore ideas like the brain acting as a receiver for consciousness, rather than the generator, or consciousness itself being fundamental to reality. These ideas, while maybe not mainstream, cannot actually be disproven by current science.
It's like we're at the edge of what we know, looking into the unknown.
Precisely. And exploring that unknown sometimes involves unconventional methods. She touches on dark retreats as another path to altered states.
Dark retreats? What are those?
It's a practice found in various traditions, like Tibetan Buddhism, and even ancient Greeks and Romans used forms of it. It involves spending extended periods, days, sometimes weeks, like 7 up to 49 days, in complete pitch-black darkness.
Wow. Just darkness. What happens?
Well, reports suggest an initial phase of increased sleepiness. But then things start to shift. People often report seeing pulsations of light, then geometric patterns, then vivid imagery, like animals, some real, some fantastical.
And does it go further?
Yes. Eventually, some report encountering beings, deities, similar perhaps to the beings of light described in NDEs.
And what's the purpose? What are the supposed benefits?
The reported outcomes often include a renewed joy for life, a significant reduction in the fear of death or failure, and a marked increase in compassion and empathy.
Are there other ways to access similar states besides something as extreme as a 49-day dark retreat?
Definitely. She mentions conscious connected breathwork, sometimes called holotropic breathwork, which uses specific breathing patterns to induce altered states, sometimes reported as similar to psilocybin experiences. And of course, there's growing research into psychedelic plants themselves for therapeutic and consciousness expanding potential.
It seems like there are many paths to potentially tapping into something beyond our everyday awareness. And it's not just humans with unusual senses, is it? Animals often seem to perceive things we don't.
Absolutely. Think about dogs or cats that are known to smell diseases like cancer or diabetes, sometimes long before medical diagnosis. Or pets that seem to sense an impending earthquake or even death.
There was that story about the woman who could smell Parkinson's disease.
Yes, Joy Milne. She noticed a distinct musky odor from her husband years before he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It turned out she has an incredibly heightened sense of smell, specifically attuned to the chemical markers of the disease.
It shows how different sensory worlds can exist. And even within humans, senses can adapt remarkably.
Exactly. Take echolocation in blind individuals. People can learn to use clicks or sounds and interpret the returning echoes to see their environment, actually repurposing the visual cortex in the brain. It demonstrates the incredible plasticity and potential of our sensory systems.
So all these examples, NDEs, animal senses, brain plasticity, they really underscore that science is a process, right? It's constantly evolving.
Precisely. Dr. Swart uses the example of Sir Russell Foster's discovery of melanopsin cells in the retina. These cells don't contribute to vision in the normal sense, but detect ambient light levels to regulate our body clock.
And that discovery wasn't immediately accepted.
No, initially it was ridiculed by many in the scientific community. How could there be photoreceptors not used for sight? But he persisted, and now it's established science. It's a great metaphor for being open to phenomena we don't yet fully understand.
Okay, this is all fascinating, potentially world-shifting stuff, but let's bring it back to the listener. If someone is intrigued by this, if they want to cultivate maybe a greater sense of connection or expanded awareness in their own life, what practical steps does Dr. Swart suggest?
Well, the very first step she emphasizes is belief, or at least openness, allowing for the possibility, even if you feel you have to keep that belief private initially because, let's face it, societal judgment can be harsh.
Okay, so start with an open mind. What else?
Neuroaesthetics. This sounds fancy, but it's simply the active practice of noticing beauty in your surroundings.
Like consciously looking for beauty?
Yes, pausing to appreciate a flower, a sunset, a piece of music, a beautiful building. She explains that this isn't just fluffy stuff. It actively triggers oxytocin release in the brain.
The love hormone.
Right. It creates a positive feedback loop, making you more likely to notice beauty again. And this practice enhances that novelty salience we talked about. It helps open the brain's filter to perceive more, potentially including subtle signs or synchronicities.
That's a lovely, actionable practice.
Yep.
What else?
Spending time in nature. This comes up again and again. It's inherently healing, grounding, and she notes that many of the signs people report butterflies, specific birds like robins, feathers, cloud formations, often come from the natural world.
It connects us back to something older, perhaps.
Maybe. Our ancestors lived in tune with nature's cycles, understanding patterns of renewal, life, and death in a way we've perhaps lost. And related to that, finding a supportive community. People you can share these perhaps unusual experiences with without fear of judgment.
That sense of connection is vital. Anything else practical?
Yes, and this might surprise you. Gut health.
Gut health. How does that relate to communicating with the deceased or expanded awareness?
She talks about the gut-brain axis. It's not just a one-way street. She calls it a three-way system. The brain, the millions of neurons lining the gut, the second brain, and the trillions of microbes living in the gut, the microbiome.
Okay, I know the gut-brain connection is important for mood and things like that.
Exactly. But she takes it further. By actively caring for your gut health through diet, probiotics, reducing inflammation, you protect your brain, especially hippocampus, which is crucial for learning and memory. This creates overall balance, or homeostasis.
And that balance.
It frees up resources, essentially. When your system isn't constantly fighting inflammation or imbalance, there's more energy available for higher cognitive functions. And she suggests this includes accessing deeper intuition, or what she terms hidden wisdom, that might be stored somatically in the body.
That's a fascinating link, physical health underpinning potential spiritual or expanded mental states.
It really is. And speaking of benefits, there's research showing that even just learning about near-death experiences can have a positive impact on people.
Really? How so?
Studies have found measurable benefits lasting over a year after simply being educated about NDEs. Things like increased compassion, more gratitude, greater kindness towards others, and, interestingly, less focus on materialism.
Wow. Just learning about it shifts perspective.
It seems so. Dr. Swart argues that having a belief in something larger than oneself, something that provides purpose and meaning, is fundamentally beneficial for physical, mental, and emotional health. She acknowledges the dangers of rigid dogma, but emphasizes the power of purpose.
And Dr. Swart herself, how is she doing now on her grief journey? It's been almost 4 years.
She said she's much better, but acknowledges it's an ongoing process. She talks about still grappling with a particular kind of guilt, the guilt of succeeding, of her life moving forward after Robin's death, a fear of letting my light really shine.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It is. She also reflects on broader societal trends, increasing individualism, endless choices which can paradoxically leave people feeling unanchored, lacking deep meaning.
A sort of crisis of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she suggests that maybe a return to some ancient wisdom, focusing on true connection, deep altruistic relationships, not just transactional ones, might be part of the antidote, something that can coexist with our modern technological lives.
What about her personal life now? Is she looking for love again?
She mentioned how Robin showed her what unconditional love felt like, something she hadn't really believed in before. She says she's open to finding love again, but isn't actively searching. She feels more vulnerable now, but also calm about it, accepting it's a very personal path.
It sounds like this whole experience, while born from immense pain, has profoundly changed her.
Absolutely. She describes herself as more fragile, yes, more vulnerable, but also somehow empowered. Empowered to use her experiences to help others who are struggling and suffering, especially those having similar non-ordinary experiences, to help them feel seen and heard.
This entire deep dive, hearing Dr. Swart's story and the science she explores, it really is a journey, even for someone starting from a place of skepticism.
It can definitely shift you towards maybe a more agnostic position, as she puts it, a place of acknowledging, okay, there's so much that I don't know. It encourages a willingness to reconsider, perhaps even change your mind about how the world works.
So, as we wrap up, we really encourage you, our listener, to just sit with this. What resonates with you? What challenges you? What aspects of Dr. Swart's journey or the concepts discussed spark your own curiosity?
And maybe leave you with this final thought to explore on your own. What small personal experiments could you try in your own life? Maybe it's consciously practicing neuroaesthetics, noticing beauty more often. Maybe it's spending more quiet time in nature. Or perhaps it's simply cultivating a gentle openness to receiving subtle signs or moments of synchronicity in your everyday world. What might you discover?